In a corner of the world, a child is born amidst war's ruins. Elsewhere, a corrupt official laughs freely, draining the people's blood. Where is God's justice? We scream in silence. Why doesn't suffering choose its victims? Why do the wicked rule while the pure are crucified? Religion promises harmony, but reality shows chaos. Is this a test, cruelty, or is God just a myth like Feuerbach's whisper, a projection of the fragile human soul? Since Epicurus' trilemma challenged the heavens, if God is all good, why does evil exist? If all-knowing, why is he silent? If all-powerful, why not erase suffering? This is not just a question. It's a rebellion of reason burning holy books. A soul's resistance refusing to accept fate as the final answer. But behind this anger lies a longing for meaning. Can the world's darkness reconcile with the perfect shadow of God? Philosophy offers theodicy. Augustine said evil is born from human freedom. John Hick proclaimed suffering as a chisel to perfect the soul. But Nietzsche mocked, a God who allows innocent suffering deserves judgment. Religion answers, job tested to the bone. The Quran promises trials for the faithful. Karma in Eastern tradition punishes without mercy. But can these answers heal a father's wound whose child was slaughtered? Or are they just excuses to ignore the silence of the heavens? Tonight, we won't run to dogma or hide behind scripture quotes. We will walk the edge of the abyss, questioning God's justice with a cool head and open heart. Sifting through your arguments about absurd rebellion, exploring interpretations defending human freedom, and perhaps finding that this question isn't about God, but about us, humans caught between silent skies and bloody earth. Prepare yourself, for we will enter the darkest labyrinth of faith and logic, where every answer births 1,000 questions, and every certainty is just a shadow of deeper doubt. If God's justice exists, where does it hide? Imagine a 5-year-old child lying in a hospital, body ravaged by cancer. He hasn't had a chance to know the world, yet he's greeted by suffering. Elsewhere, a dictator enjoys power while thousands of his people's corpses rot under the ruins of war. Here, at the peak of human civilization, we face a question that shakes the heavens. If God is all good and all-powerful, why is such suffering allowed? This is the problem of evil, the oldest paradox tearing at human belief. Since Epicurus posed this question 2,300 years ago, philosophers like Hume turned it into a deadly trilemma. A perfect God and a world full of evil are two things that cannot coexist. But why do both still exist? Philosophy splits evil into two: moral and natural. Moral is human-made evil, like murder, war, betrayal. Natural is suffering from nature itself, like earthquakes, disease outbreaks, tsunamis. Augustine's Theodicy says moral evil comes from human freedom. God gives us freedom, and we misuse it. But for cancer in kids, Augustine blames original sin that harms nature. John Hick sees suffering as soul-making, God's tool to perfect our souls. But can we accept this when seeing a baby starve in Somalia? Here, the problem of evil isn't just academic. It's a cry of a wounded heart. Nietzsche, the God-killer, mocks. If God exists, he doesn't deserve worship. If he knows everything, he sees innocent suffering. If all-powerful, he could stop it. If all good, he'd want to stop it. But suffering persists, so God doesn't exist. Or he is a monster. Nietzsche's argument is like a sledgehammer crushing faith's foundation. But philosophers don't stay silent. Alvin Plantinga replies, God might have a reason beyond our grasp. David Bentley Hart says, we conclude too quickly that evil is meaningless. But here's the issue. All these answers feel like a metaphysical black hole. Heard deeply, but doesn't answer the victim's cries. We can keep debating about free will, soul-making, or human perspective limits. But at the end of these theories, there's one biting question. Can philosophy dry a mother's tears whose child was raped and murdered? Here, philosophy reaches its limit. Here, we stand at the abyss's edge, staring into unanswered darkness. But maybe, as philosopher William Rowe said, God might exist, but his justice isn't ours. Or maybe this darkness is the final answer. The next part will be darker. Hold on. In a barren desert, a man named Job sits on ashes. His body is full of sores. His kids are dead. His wealth is gone. He cries out to the sky, "Why me, God? I am not guilty." God doesn't answer with an explanation. Instead, he shakes Job with questions. "Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Or who shut up the sea with doors?" Job chapter 38, verses 4 to 8. This is not an answer. It's a slap. A statement that God's justice surpasses human logic. Judaism and Christianity agree. God owes no explanation to his creation. But in Islam, Al-Ghazali asserts, God has wisdom, a transcendent wisdom beyond human understanding. Can this be accepted when a mother sees her child destroyed by war bullets? When a 12-year-old girl is buried alive for family honor? Where is God's voice when human justice is quieter than the wind? To obey. The Quran answers firmly. Do humans think they can say we believe without being tested? Quran Surah Al-Ankabut verse 2. Every suffering, say the scholars, is a test of patience, a path to paradise. Imam Ibn Qayyim wrote, tests are proof of God's love, like fire separating gold from dirt. But here's the paradox. If God is all-knowing, doesn't he already know who passes the test without needing to torment them? Islamic philosopher Syed Muhammad Naqib al-Adaz criticized, tests are not for God, but for humans to realize their absolute dependence on him. In Gaza, a child lost both legs due to a bomb. He asked his father, "What is my sin?" The father, with frozen tears, could only whisper, "This is ibtila, a test, my child." But can this answer fill a hungry stomach or reattach legs separated from the body? In a Hindu temple, a mother cries in front of the statue of goddess Kali. Her baby was born blind. A priest whispers, "This is prarabdha karma, a debt from past lives that must be paid." Karma, the cruel cosmic law. But in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna reminds, karma is the law of cause and effect, not punishment. Buddha rejected the fatalism of karma. Suffering can be ended through the Noble Eightfold Path, not by surrendering to fate. Then, what about a baby who is raped and then killed? What sin could a fetus in the womb commit? The cosmic law turns out to be crueler than human crime. European cathedrals echo with the story of Adam's original sin. Augustine said, "In Adam, all humans have sinned." But modern theologians like Karl Barth reject this. Original sin is a metaphor for human disconnection from God, not a biological curse. Fyodor Dostoevsky challenges in The Brothers Karamazov, if the suffering of children is needed to pay for eternal truth, then that truth is not worth buying. Here, Christian theology is squeezed. If God sacrifices the innocent for a cosmic plan, is he different from a cruel tyrant? Religions promise justice in the afterlife, but on earth, the corpses of rape victims still rot. Corruptors still laugh in golden palaces. The sky remains silent. Maybe our question is wrong. Not where is God's justice, but why do we still hope for justice that never comes? In the next section, we will leave the sky to dive into the abyss of human doubt. As Albert Camus said, if God exists, why must we be heroes for ourselves? Are you ready to face the possibility that the final answer lies within ourselves? A woman sits in a dark room hugging a photo of her child shot dead by police. Her lips tremble. God, if you exist, why are you silent? This is no longer a philosophical question. This is the cry of a soul scorched by loss. Religion offers heaven, but she wants her child back now. Philosophy peddles theories, but what she needs. Here, at humanity's lowest point, all answers feel empty. Augustine's Theodicy, as Levi Yitzhak, the Jewish poet, said, explanations for suffering insult the sufferer. Karma, vile nonsense, and Almighty God, a grand name that doesn't answer sorrow's call. Alfred North Whitehead argues, God is not a cruel puppeteer, but a participant in suffering. In process theology, God is not absolutely omnipotent. He struggles with us, guiding the universe with persuasion, not force. But can this be accepted if God couldn't stop the Rwandan genocide? Then what's the difference from his absence? Elie Wiesel, an Auschwitz survivor, wrote, God, where is he? There, hanging on the gallows. This is the paradox. A fragile God is more human. But Humans need more than just a companion in suffering. They need answers. They need justice. Soren Kierkegaard wrote, "Faith begins where logic ends." For him, Abraham willing to sacrifice Isaac was not blind obedience but a leap into absurdity. True faith, Kierkegaard said, is accepting the paradox that God can ask the unreasonable. But in the 21st century, can we accept absurdity when bombs destroy hospitals? Albert, you argue, absurdity is not a reason for faith. It's a reason to rebel. Kierkegaard's leap of faith sounds like an excuse for a negligent God. Or perhaps, in this abyss of absurdity, we find ultimate freedom, the freedom to choose to believe, even when all evidence says otherwise. Stephen Hawking once said, "There's no need to invoke God to light the blue paper of the universe. The laws of physics, entropy, natural selection, chaos theory, sufficiently explain suffering. A tsunami is not God's wrath, but shifting tectonic plates." But here arises a new question. If the universe is neutral, then where is the room for justice? A lion pounces on a deer. That's natural law. A psychopath slaughters a family. Is that failed neural evolution? Science answers that justice is merely a human concept. Nature doesn't care. But if so, isn't our entire civilization, law, morality, religion, just a charade to cover a terrifying void? In the Theresienstadt concentration camp, Viktor Frankl found meaning amidst hell. Everything can be taken from a man, except the last freedom, the freedom to choose one's attitude. Perhaps this is the temporary answer. God, if he exists, will not come to save us, but he gives us hands to save each other, gives us mouths to shout no to injustice. In the final part, we will ask, if God is silent, do we have the right to be silent too? As Dietrich Bonhoeffer said before being executed, the God we worship is a weak God, a God present in human suffering. Or perhaps this is the true calling of humanity, to become little gods rebelling against the cosmic void. The sky is silent. God, if he exists, does not stop the bullets taking children's lives in Sudan, nor destroy dictators' weapon stores. But in this silence, another voice echoes, the judge's gavel punishing rapists, the crowd demanding reform, mother stoves feeding hungry neighbors. Here, in Theodicy's ruins, we find the most radical answer. God's justice doesn't fall from the sky. It is born from human hands choosing not to be silent. Martin Luther King Jr. shouted, "Justice delayed is justice denied." He didn't wait for miracles. He moved knowing bullets could end his life. And indeed, Paulo Freire, the father of education for the oppressed, didn't pray for awareness. He taught illiterate farmers to read while raising arms against the regime. In Gaza in 2021, Dr. Izzadeen Abu El-Aish, Dr. Palestinian and Yehuda Kopperman, Dr. Israeli shared medicines across the blockade. Amidst the war, they became small gods, choosing to heal, not destroy. This is Theodicy liberation theology. God sides with the oppressed, not with miracles but by inspiring rebellion. Viktor Frankl, a concentration camp survivor, wrote, "If life has a purpose, suffering has meaning." He wasn't talking about divine meaning. This is human meaning, the courage to love amidst hate, to build on ruins. Look at the Hibakusha, Hiroshima survivors, campaigning for global peace. Look at Paul Rusesabagina, who saved 1,268 lives during the Rwandan genocide. Look at the mothers of Plaza de Mayo, dancing with photos of missing children on their chests. They didn't wait for God's justice. They created it with tears that became cement, blood that became paint, and bones that became foundations. This isn't faith. This is rebellion in the style of Albert Camus. Rebellion that births meaning from emptiness. We have challenged the sky, cursed theology, and doubted the scriptures. Now, one question remains. Will we wear the crown of God that has fallen? Every time you defend a bullying victim, you are God's justice. Every time you refuse a bribe, you are God's truth. Every time you embrace someone of a different faith, you are God's love. Every time you embrace but justice, if what is done must be borne on earth with our hands, said towards the clause in the Syrian refugee video. A woman draws a sun with bullet holes. She said, "I don't know where God's progress is. But I know where pride is, maybe the will of justice doesn't determine place or direction. But the question forces us to move like fire in the guignol that returns from above the sky. We must choose to breathe behavior, or light a candle with our own hands. In an empty room, a child looks at the sky and asks, "Is God asleep?" We've explored the desert of philosophy, climbed theology's mountain, and dived into doubt's abyss. But the question remains, where is God's justice? Maybe we're like ants asking about rain, while the answer is beyond our minds. Or maybe, as Einstein said, God doesn't play dice, but in this quantum uncertainty, is it fair for fate's dice to decide children's suffering? Religion promises heaven, philosophy wisdom, science natural laws. But in hospital halls, refugee tents, and dark cells, these answers vanish, leaving silence. But in that silence, Martin Luther King Jr. whispers, "Darkness can't drive out darkness, only light can." We carve justice's path by not being indifferent, rejecting tyranny, being a voice for the voiceless. God may not come with a flaming sword, but as Tagore said, he leaves stars in our eyes and fire in our hearts. Frankl wrote, "Between stimulus and response, there's a gap. In that gap is our freedom. In that gap, we decide to lament the silent sky or be Prometheus stealing justice's fire, waiting for a miracle, or like Mother Earth in Javanese myth, tending the wounded earth. We are puzzles seeking answers, and answers seeking questions. As Arendt said, amidst destruction, there's room for new action. Tonight, we close with the same question as the start. Where is God's justice? Maybe here, in the air we breathe, in the tears we dry for others, in the hand you extend to a stranger, or perhaps it's in every choice to keep believing, even if the sky never answers. Because in the end, as Kierkegaard said, life must be understood backward but lived forward. We embrace the paradox of planting justice seeds in barren land, waiting not for God's answer, but for sprouts to break through. If this video stirs your soul, don't stay silent. Share, discuss, and keep asking. Ask like Job who rebelled, not like Faust who sold his soul. And remember, this world is dark, but as long as some dare to be the dawn, as Darwish said, darkness will never win.